Just quickly, Russia's also threatened nuclear escalation. Are you comfortable with that when people at home are watching this, worrying that you could put us at risk?
Well, it's very important. It's very important that we're steadfast in our support for Ukraine. Russia is the aggressor,
Even if
Russia
unleashes nuclear war.
Russia has to be the one that makes the move to stop this war. It's within their gift, but we must support Ukraine. It's impacting not just Ukraine; it's impacting the rest of the world, including the UK.
Is your message to viewers back home that there will not be a nuclear war, because that is what Russia is threatening?
My message is that we need to ensure that Ukraine is put in the best possible position. This is 1,000 days of conflict, and there is a very high cost if Russian aggression is seen to pay off.
The number of clashes on the front lines has dropped in the past week, probably due to a slowdown in the Russian offensive towards Kurakhove. Nonetheless, Kurakhove and Kursk together account for approximately 60% of all Russian attacks. Despite the lower number of assaults overall, however, Russian forces have made notable gains in CHASIV. In particular, the Russian push near Kurakhove has slowed down. Their forces are engaged in battles and have made comparatively less gains this week. Clashes have dropped by nearly a third, according to Ukrainian media, and this suggests that the Russian forces may be regrouping or awaiting reinforcements. After the Russians took Maximivka, the Ukrainian forces seem to have at least temporarily stabilized the southern line further west, managing to, for now, hold back the Russian offensive on the Suki-Yali River. However, a looming threat of encirclement has emerged on the eastern wing of the southern flank of Kurakhove, and this corridor is currently less than a mere 5.5 kilometers in width, and hundreds, if not thousands, of Ukrainian soldiers remain trapped.
Подожди, броник пока не надо снимать, подожди. Подожди, лучше не шевелись пока, за нами следят. Выход! Выход!
Further up north, the Pokrovsk front continues to show little action. The northern flank remains stable while the Russians are probing for weaknesses in Ukrainian defenses on the southern side with the hopes of reaching the road leading to Pokrovsk. While the Russian gains near Novoselivka, Yurivka, and Postinika were minor, their biggest breakthrough was a 1.5 kilometer advance along the Selilove-Pokrovsk road. Further south, they managed to occupy the grey zone near the mine at Kruty Yar. The defense of CHASIV, however, has seen significant breaches, which isn't surprising given that the city has endured over a year of relentless bombardment, including with guided aerial bombs. South of the city, Russian forces have finally pushed Ukrainian troops back near Klishivka and Andriivka, positions that previously blocked their flanking maneuvers. Meanwhile, in the Kursk region, Russian forces saw their biggest gains on the right flank, finally entering Blehovo after a month of fierce fighting. But what continues to puzzle many analysts, as well as myself, is Ukraine's dogged persistence in holding on to the ever-shrinking bulge in Kursk, which continues to suck up their best soldiers and armor. Apparently, based on the views of Dmytro Malyu, the co-founder and executive director of the Ukrainian Center for Security and Cooperation, holding Kursk region may be more crucial in terms of geopolitical situation than the Ukrainian positions in Donetsk and Luhansk. All this and more in today's Frontline Update, and given the amount of time and effort it takes to produce these reports, I appreciate all support via Super Thanks donations, as well as joining my channel membership for exclusive videos. Links, of course, are in the description. So let's get into it. While the Ukrainians are holding the line in Yelisavetica and Ilinka, While fighting rearguard actions in Antonivka, the Russians are still advancing toward Ospenivka, where the goal is to cut off supply lines. The grey zone in this area is now within 1.5 kilometers of Ospenivka, which is a key logistical hub. Losing this position would isolate Ukrainian brigades east of Dali and Ospenivka, forcing a costly breakout under tough conditions. Although Ukrainian forces are cautiously pulling back from vulnerable areas, holding Chudove and the approaches to Ospenivka remains critical. Any breach from the north, where Russian troops are pushing toward Ilinka and Romanivka, would further complicate the retreat. Meanwhile, the fight around Dali has become a flashpoint. With Dali nearly lost, Russian forces are poised to sever the Kurakhove-Ospenivka road and gain access to southern Kurakhove. Julian Rupke, prominent German journalist, reported that Russian troops have 5.5 kilometers left to close the boiler south of Kurakhove. South of Dali, several hundred soldiers of the armed forces of Ukraine continue to defend 5 to 6 villages on the banks of the Suki Yali River. He reports that the Russians have completely occupied Dali while approaching the city of Chudove, which reduced the corridor of withdrawal of the Ukrainian armed forces through the village of Ospenivka and Konstantinopolsky. Ukrainian forces must hold this ground at all costs. Russian forces, aware of its importance, have intensified their attacks. Whether the sudden front collapses or withdraws in an organized manner hinges on the battle in this area. Fierce combat continues in the eastern part of Kurakhove, which has become a grey zone without clear control. Russian forces are particularly active near School No. 3, a contested site where Ukrainian soldiers have launched repeated counterattacks to push them out. Yet, the occupying Russian troops continue to press, especially from the north. With the Vovcha reservoir dried up after dam explosions, Russian troops are using it as a passage for their attacks. As winter frost strengthens, Kurakhove's northern defenses could become even more vulnerable, where Ukrainian forces are now withdrawing with battles. To the north, Ukrainian forces were able to take part of Sonstivka and establish defenses there. In addition, they are containing Russian advances following the occupation of Voznesenka and Novoselidivka. These efforts have allowed Ukrainian troops to pull back gradually along the northern bank of the Kurakhove reservoir. Despite this, Russian forces have occupied the Novo Ilinka and parts of Eretsky, where battles are ongoing. The northern flank's front line now runs along a ridge from central Beretsky northward. While the situation here seems more stable than the southern flank, it could ultimately lead to a phased Ukrainian withdrawal from Kurakhove. Recent developments, however, suggest that retreating from the city is not yet imminent. On the CHASIV front, it is now safe to say that the Russians have fully occupied Klishivka, and the grey zone has expanded westward by 3 kilometers to the Seversky Donets Canal. And southward by 5 kilometers, including Andriivka. Ukrainian forces are expected to withdraw to the canal's right bank, abandoning areas reclaimed during the 2023 summer counteroffensive. The canal is shaping up to be a new defensive line. In CHASIV itself, Russian forces have advanced to the Zovetnevi district, occupying the northern part of the city. They've since pushed further, launching offensives in the central district where intense fighting continues. Meanwhile, they've captured all of Kalinivka, connecting their northern and central positions. The fiercest clashes are now centered around the cultural center and the refractory plant. These battles will likely determine how long CHASIV's defense can hold. If the central part of the city falls, the situation will become much more critical. The Russians have expanded their control northward, taking the towns of Pushka Noye, Voskaya Konopelka, and Kruglik, while continuously attacking positions near Nakayev. Ukrainian forces, however, were able to retake some lost ground near Pogrebki. Near Olgovka, Ukrainian troops found themselves in a semi-encirclement. Some Ukrainian media claims that they were able to retreat and secure new positions. This, however, remains unconfirmed. Nevertheless, Russian forces crossed the Snagos River near Darino, where fighting continues. However, their key offensive direction is toward Malaya Lochnia and the Sudza Highway, where they have not been able to make much progress this past week. The Russians remain engaged in fighting near Novo-Ivanivka and Zeleny Shailak. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian forces deploy long-range Atacam missiles for the first time, hitting a military base in the Bryansk region.
Я в машине сидел, выбежал аж. Во. Ебать, блядь! Взрывают сейчас. Вон там дым идет. Еще они там забомбили. Еще один прилет летит. Ебать!
In fact, the co-founder and executive chairman of the Ukrainian Center for Security and Cooperation, Dmitry Malio, in an interview with Ukrainian TV, said as follows with respect to the Atacam strike and the Kursk offensive. The warehouses in the Bryansk region of the 67th Missile and Artillery Directorate of the Russian Armed Forces were originally intended for the Sever troop grouping, which is attempting to counter the Ukrainian bridgehead in the Kursk region. To hinder their progress, we targeted the Tikhoretsk and Toropets warehouses with drones a few weeks ago. According to him, the destruction of Russian arsenals in the Bryansk region has delayed Russia's timeline for eliminating the Ukrainian foothold in the Kursk region. Initially, and of course this is all massive speculation and likely Ukrainian propaganda, nevertheless it is good to hear what the Ukrainians tell their people. They say that Russia planned to eliminate the Kursk Bulge by the 1st of October, but has now postponed it to February 1st, 2025. But here's where his statements get interesting, if not delusional. By February 25th next year, the Ukrainian armed forces plan to establish a similar mirror foothold in Ukraine's Sumy region. So as difficult as it is to say, holding our position in the Kursk region is crucial for all geopolitical scenarios, even more so than holding our positions in eastern Ukraine in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. And yes, this was a direct quote. Bear in mind, this man is not part of the Ukrainian command, and therefore it is hard to say how much truth one can attach to his words. Notwithstanding, it does seem that the Ukrainians are putting a disproportionate amount of effort into holding on to the Kursk Bulge, and given the losses they have taken thus far, without any clear goal achieved by this misadventure, his reasoning behind keeping Kursk does warrant some attention. But I am curious to see how long the Ukrainian command can expect to hold on to Kursk, repel the Russian advance in the east, while preserving enough forces to launch another supposed offensive in Sumy, given the ever-increasing desertion crisis that is afflicting the Ukrainian armed forces.
Великих міст майже немає. У нас буквально лише один. Звичайно, це жителі маленьких містечок і сіл. Майже на 90 з чимось відсотків. Майже всі вони були призвані і мобілізовані от шляхом цієї бусифікації. Історії, які вони розповідають, сміючись, це дійсно страшно смішні ржачні історії.
Наприклад?
При тому, кожна історія, вона різна, але в усьому сюжет такий, що я кудись пішов, і тут...
In fact, on the 18th of November, the BBC Russian service published a report stating that since the beginning of the 2022 conflict, a whopping 95% of criminal cases have been opened for unauthorized abandonment of the unit and/or desertion. This amounts to approximately 1/10 of the entire Ukrainian army. Out of those 95,000 cases, some 41,000 were opened between January to October of this year. BBC sources in the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine say that the real figures are even higher, nearing between 100 to 150,000 cases of abandonment and desertion, which, by the way, is 2.5 times more than the whole of 2023. And you might be asking yourself, what is the difference between abandonment and desertion? According to a lawyer of the public organization called Legal 100, unauthorized abandonment of a unit is when a military man leaves his place of duty without the commander's permission or without a valid reason. Desertion, however, is an intention to completely avoid military service. The main reasons given for the sharp increase in the past 6 months is fatigue and what they call as busification, which means forced mobilization using minibuses. Positions are mainly left either by those who were mobilized by force and without sufficient training sent to the front line, or morally exhausted military who have served from the beginning of the 2022 conflict. 25-year-old Dennis explained in quotations that, "I am tired of fighting so actively." He had been serving for more than 5 years, which is almost half his adult life.